Welcome back to this fifth workshop of our six-part Get It Done webinar series on estate planning. I'm John Mitchell, CEO of Arden Wood here in San Francisco. And with me again is Rick Bailey, one of the most respected estate planners in the country. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you'll feel as strongly as we do about the good progress we've made toward the goal of you being ready to bring your estate plan to your own attorney to polish and finalize to get it done. Rick has helped countless Christian scientists at every stage and income level to navigate estate planning with clarity and care. We're grateful for his support in these hands-on informational sessions. Today, Rick will share his insights on advanced planning topics, which are outlined on the chart you should have received along with the Zoom you relieved along with the Zoom about an hour before this presentation. Here it is right here. I'm trying to find it here. So I hope that was helpful. As always, Rick is happy to answer your questions. And to protect your anonymity, please post them using the Q&A button or icon at the bottom of your screen, the Zoom screen here. And so I'll read each one aloud without mentioning your name so that everyone can benefit from Rick's response. So with that, Rick, let's get started. Welcome.
All right, I appreciate being here. Let me turn on our PowerPoint slide for today. So today we want to take a little bit of a journey, a little different than what we've been. We've been talking about the basics of estate planning. Today we want to talk a little bit more about the advanced planning topics. This is more when you think about your planning, we're trying to get the best result for you. So there's a lot of tools, there's a lot of strategies, and we want to make sure all of these that we're putting together work. Now, if we look at the fundamental planning, what we've been talking about, do you need a revocable trust or a will? You could be using both. You could be using just a will or, whatever fits your situation. And I've got that in there. What's best for me? So when you think about this, all of your planning is based around your goals, your objectives. And so that's part of it. Then we have the durable power of attorney to take care of any assets that are outside of the trust if you're using a trust. If you have just a will, you definitely need the durable power of attorney, because if you lose mental capacity, you want to have somebody ready to step in and take care of that for you. Same thing for the power of attorney for healthcare. You want to make sure that there's somebody that is taking care of you the way you want to be taken care of. Now, on the powers of attorney, if you don't have those in place, then it's up to the courts to appoint somebody to take care of you because you're not in a position to take care of your own decisions. So we want to make sure those happen. And finally, it's getting your assets organized and making sure whether it's your retirement accounts, life insurance, annuities, whatever it is, if it has a beneficiary designation, we want to make sure that's taken care of and that is coordinated into all of your other planning documents. So everything works together in concert. So now when we start taking the next step, and let me back up a little bit. What is advanced planning? These are just the other strategies that we need to look at to use to make sure that they all fit according to what you need to accomplish. And it's not about your wealth or how much you own. It's, are we using the tools in specific situations to achieve the goals that you've laid out? So if you think about this, a lot of times it's about estate and income tax planning. Now, none of us like paying taxes. And part of paying the taxes is it's up to you if you want to reduce that down to what the minimum that you're legally obligated to pay. And there's planning tools from both an estate perspective and an income perspective that can be part of your plan. So think about that. Can we reduce taxes? Next is protection. And I talk to a lot of people about asset protection, but it's, can you be protected away from your creditors? Can you help your kids protect themselves from their creditors? What about a divorce? Can we plan ahead to make sure those assets are protected in the event of a divorce in the future? Do you have somebody in your family that has a spending issue? It's one, I see that a lot where money gets passed on to the kids, and the kids are not good with money. And so can we protect them from themselves? And of course, then we have special needs planning. For those that need that extra help, that extra planning. And so protection is not just about the money, it's trying to make sure we get the right solution. Another area that I want to talk about is our charitable planning. Do you have charitable goals that you want to accomplish during life or when you pass? All of that can be part of your overall plan. And finally, we get to complex assets. There's just assets by themselves they need extra planning around them. Real estate, businesses, if we have concentrated stock positions because you've worked for say a tech company, or you have a big one-time liquidity event such as selling your business. This is where we bring in these other advanced planning tools, or you can take advanced planning out of it and just put in the parentheses there, other tools to accomplish what you're after. So part of this is using irrevocable trusts for asset protection. And if you think about this, it's when do you need to put guardrails on? It's not something that we take lightly. And I really look at this especially in the asset protection world, when we move into an irrevocable trust. I want everybody to remember this is different than our revocable living trust that we have as part of our fundamental planning. Revocable living trust can be changed, can be amended. Up until you lose mental capacity or pass, that trust is going to be changed at your will. If it's an irrevocable trust, now we've boxed ourselves in that corner on purpose because we want to give up some of the control to make sure we create a plan that's more protected. So all of this is good. It's just we want to make sure it's done the right way. One of the areas that I see irrevocable trusts, in place are where we need to hold assets for beneficiaries with trustee oversight. Especially, think about this after you pass. Do you want your kids controlling things, or do they need somebody to oversee what they're doing? Or, are we looking to provide creditor and divorce protection for heirs, maybe starting it now, not waiting till death? And sometimes it's just we need to, structure distributions more, and using irrevocable trusts are going to work better. A lot of common triggers that we'll have if you think about this. Does a beneficiary need help making decisions, especially on their money and finances? Do we have special needs benefits planning that we need to work on? Or do you have real estate or other business liabilities concerns that may affect the rest of your wealth and your planning? So those would be good triggers to be thinking of in your mind. And then once we have the choices that we're going to move forward, think about the trustees. We've talked about trustees before, and the trustees are the people that are going to take on the trust after you're no longer there. But in an irrevocable trust, you cannot be the trustee of your own trust. When you're setting it up, you take on the role of what's called the grantor, or the person setting it up. You cannot be your own trustee of your irrevocable trust. So now you're going to put somebody else in place. Might be a spouse, might be a child, might be another relative, could be a bank or a trust company if that's what it needs to be. Then the other choices you're going to have to outline is, how do you want distributions from that trust to be made? You've got to think into the future and think about a lot of these what if scenarios. We don't want to run into a situation where you've put money in that irrevocable trust or property in that trust, and we can't get it to where you want to go. So we take more time with the planning to make sure we don't get a what if scenario that doesn't work. So all of that comes into helping us get this set up right, and then we can move forward. if you think about the irrevocable trust, and I'll just give you a couple examples here. One, we'll use it for life insurance. A lot of times we want the life insurance to be protected now, and we want it away from all of our other assets to be able to either protect the life insurance away from your creditors, those types of things, or we might want to set it up now to handle family and spousal issues. So I can set up an irrevocable life insurance trust or an irrevocable trust and put assets in there, life insurance, bank accounts, investment accounts, stock accounts, whatever it is. And I can set that up for my wife now. The nice thing about that is if I set it up, she can now be the beneficiary of that trust during her lifetime and during my lifetime, and she can get that benefit protected away from her creditors. I can't set it up and protect away from my creditors with these types of trusts, but I can set it up for her to be protected from her creditors. And, it just takes a little bit of work to get it there. I like this because, where I see a lot more of this is, especially now we have blended families. A lot of times when we have blended families with the blended kids, we can get some odd situations and results. So we want to think those through. Do we need to set up some of that protection now, not waiting until the future at passing to make that all set up? Finally, we want to look at the special needs or spendthrift trusts. Special needs planning, the reason we have to look at special needs planning different. These, the special needs benefits are typically needs-based benefits. You have to go qualify for those governmental programs. Well, think about this. If somebody hasn't planned ahead, and all of a sudden there's a distribution, let's say all of the assets go to that special needs child of $1 million. Well, that $1 million will now knock them out of any programs that were needs-based that was helping them. And what the government programs are designed to do is you spend all of your money first, then that special needs child can reapply and see, can they now get back into the program? Well, we can do better. And the way we do better is we put that into a special needs trust, an irrevocable trust, and we get a trustee that has discretion to take care of that special needs child. And I say, like mom and dad would have. Use the money in their best interest. If we can get other programs to help, great. But we would spend every dime if we had to take care of that child. So we give the trustee a lot of discretion on what to do and how to do it. But that now puts pressure on you to pick the right person. Pick somebody that knows that child, knows the needs that they have, and is willing to work with them to make sure they're taken care of. So we're putting somebody in a position that takes a lot of work, but we're putting a lot of faith and trust in them to do it right. The other thing that I like here is the spendthrift provisions. And I use this a lot for kids that just may not be good with money, or they have creditor problems potentially. With a spendthrift provision, so if you put a trust in place, that spendthrift provision, and I will tell you this, the attorneys should be telling everybody about this from day one, but they just added it in as just, oh, by the way, it's in there. What it says is as long as the assets are held in the trust, no creditor, no ex-spouse, nobody can touch the money in the trust. And so now your kids get the benefit of what you passed on to them through the trust. That trust can buy them a home to live in. That trust can give them a car to drive. But if they distributed the money to them to go buy their own house outside of the trust, that spendthrift provision no longer applies. That child now has the money in their hands. And if their creditors or ex-spouse now want access to it, they've got it. So we build the trust so that we can keep that trust alive a lot longer than most people think we can. And in some states, we can have trusts that last forever. And so the longer term perspective you have, depending on what state you're in, we look at the state you're in. If not, we can pick a state that has it, but we can get the provisions that matter to you. With charitable planning, this is an area that falls into two areas. One, it's a tax benefit, and two, it reflects your values of what was important to you while you were alive, and they all come together and really meet in the same spot. So if you think about charitable planning, we give a lot of money to charities while we're alive. Now we look at, are there other ways that make more sense, or just open your eyes to the ability to do more? Well, you can do it what's called a donor advised fund. Now, a donor advised fund, I will have clients set these up. These are charitable contributions, but you can make a large gift. Sometimes we do a large gift for tax planning, but you make that large gift to the donor advised fund, and then now the donor advised fund can give out smaller grants to 501c3 entities over the future of that trust or that fund until the money's gone. None of that comes back to you. You can't put the money in and take it back. That's a no-no. But it allows you to bunch up all your gifts and get a better tax deduction if that's needed. And then it's there to give out and to the charities that you like. And it can be one charity, it can be multiple charities. It's up to whatever you want it to do. If you don't spend it, your kids can continue that giving program that you've established for them. Here's one that I think is not being publicized as much as it should be. Qualified charitable distributions. Qualified charitable distributions. A lot of people have been very diligent planning for retirement. And they put money in their 401k, they put money in their IRAs, they've done a good job investing, they built for this beautiful retirement. And they got to retirement and realized, I don't need that much money. And if I take money out of my IRAs, I get taxed on it. We all know that. And so what the tax code now allows is a qualified charitable distribution. So what it allows you to do is take a distribution from your IRA if you're over age 70 and a half, and you can make that distribution direct to the charity or charities of your choice. Now, I specifically say this can't go to a donor advised fund because I do get that question. But what's nice about this is you don't get a tax deduction for doing this, but you don't have to recognize the income like you would if you took that distribution to yourself. So it allows you to give more to charity, reduce your tax bill, but also benefit the charities that you want now. When you also look at this, the third thing I want to look at is split interest trusts. And split interest trusts, we'll talk a little bit more about this on another slide, but there's charitable remainder trusts, charitable lead trusts, and those are helpful in that we can give to charity either when we pass, but use the money now, or we can give the money now and get the principal back later. So we'll talk about that here as we go through. When you look at a qualified charitable distribution, there again, 70 and a half, it has to go from an IRA directly to the charity. So you just tell your IRA custodian, I want you to cut a check to XYZ charity. And what this allows is also takes care of your required minimum distributions. And if you look at it, you'd rather give taxable IRA dollars than after-tax cash. That's where I see a lot of people, they'll take the money in, pay the tax, and then write a check from their checkbook to their charity. Well, now you've paid extra tax that you didn't need to, which can cause other margin rate pushes and those things in your tax planning. Or we can give it direct to the charity and avoid the tax altogether. The 2026, you can give up to $111,000 per person. And that number will go up because in the tax code, it's now indexed for inflation. There's some other, one-time options here. Let's not get into those, but there's other scenarios that may fit as we go along. Let's look at charitable remainder trust and charitable lead trust. I love doing these. Number one is I work with clients that are very charitably inclined. And I have to tell you, I work with clients that don't have any charitable bone in their body. And a lot of times we end up using the exact same thing, a charitable remainder trust or a charitable lead trust, because they're good tax planning tools. What I like about the charitable remainder trust is this allows you to take let's say you're selling a rental property today, and you want to sell that rental property because you're at the age you don't want to keep fixing the roof or whatever happens. You don't want to deal with tenants anymore. You want to enjoy your retirement years. Well, one of the problems is if you sell that rental home, you're going to have to pay the taxes. So we can take that rental home, we can put it into a charitable remainder trust. When we transfer it in, we create a tax deduction. That tax deduction depends on your age and how big of an income stream you want to take back during your life or joint life if you're married. What this allows is now you can create an income stream for you to live during retirement. And there again, the higher the income stream, the lower our charitable deduction. That's just, the way it's going to work. But at the end of either your life or yours and your spouse's life, however you want to set that up, at the end, the remainder goes to charity. So the charity is going to get whatever's left. You're going to use that income during your lifetime, and you're going to get a tax deduction now to offset some of your taxes for the next, probably 2 to 5 years. The exact opposite of that almost is the charitable lead trust. The charitable lead trust now, and here's why I like this, you're going to give money to charity now. So we put that money from that sale of property or whatever it was, we can put it into the charitable lead trust. That's going to generate a tax deduction now, of course. But now you say over the next 5, 10, 15 years, I'm going to give 5% or 10% or whatever it is to your favorite charity or charities. And I like this because now you get to see the good that your money can do. You're going to benefit that charity now. They don't have to wait for some time in the future when you pass, but they get that money now to be able to do the good things that you want them to do. At the end of that, whatever term you set up, the 5, 10, or 15 years, whatever's left now, that comes back to you. Again, that can be either used for retirement, that can be used to pass on to your kids as part of your estate plan, but the remainder of what's left goes back to the family. So these are two good tools. There again, it helps us just to solve problems that, creating income, where we have, especially when we have an asset that might not be liquid, and we can improve things to where you can incur a better retirement than, fixing roofs and on houses that, you just probably don't want to do anymore. So good tools to be using. Finally, another thing I'd like to talk about is insurance and annuities. With the insurance and annuities, this is an area where it helps us solve a problem. A lot of times everybody knows what life insurance does. You get a death benefit. Or with annuities, you can create retirement income. And we can do retirement income now from life insurance policies. We can create a death benefit, small one from an annuity. But where I like to come down and talk about is long-term care. Long-term care is becoming a bigger and bigger drain on individuals' retirement years. It drains the retirement income. And if they're spouses, it drains the income for the the spouse that didn't need the long-term care. But what I like from this is we can create we can use hybrid life insurance or annuities to solve more of this problem without giving up control. And let's look at that. With a hybrid life insurance, what I'm talking about is this is a life insurance policy, and the annuity will work very similar, where we take that policy, we're going to put premium in over a number of years or a single deposit. With that policy now, we have, let's just use the life insurance policy. We have a life insurance policy, but it has a rider on it. And a rider is, think about this, it's an additional benefit or addendum to that contract. What that contract is going to do is allow us to take out money one of three ways, and could be all three ways when we're all done. If there's cash value building in the policy, you can access the cash value from that policy if properly designed, income tax free. So that's income tax free. It doesn't affect any of your Medicare benefits, or Medicare premiums. So it's a great non-taxable tool to be using. We know we're going to get a death benefit. It's a life insurance policy, and if it's an annuity that you didn't fully use, there's going to be a death benefit from that as well. And that death benefit is going to pay out in a life insurance policy, income tax free to your heirs. And that death benefit can go to your family, it can go to a charity, can go wherever you want it to go. But now let's look at that third thing that's in there, long-term care. What it allows us to do is accelerate the death benefit to take care of your long-term care needs now and do it tax-free. So let's say we have built this policy and it had a $500,000 death benefit. Well, now instead of waiting till you pass and your kid's getting the $500,000, the need has arisen now for you to cover your long-term care. So long-term care, now, if you get to the situation where you need long-term care, we're going to spend every dime of your retirement money. We're going to, access your home. We're going to do whatever it takes to get access to money to pay for that long-term care need. Well, now this gives us another asset. Instead of waiting for that death benefit to pay when you pass, we can now accelerate that death benefit and use that now to pay your long-term care how you want it. So if you want to live at home, great. If there's an assisted living home you want to go to, that's great too. You're going to use that money how you want to, and the family gets to use it when they want to. If there's other assets, don't touch it. If we're short on assets, here's a way we can create income, and available cash to pay for those long-term care benefits. So it's a great tool. It's not for everybody, but it's a tool I want you to be aware of. So let's put all this together, because this is what we're trying to do in this, and with this whole program, is making sure you're aware of the tools that can help you achieve the goals that you have, whether it's fundamental planning or what we're talking about here in the advanced planning. So if you want to give more or give tax smart, we've got the donor advised fund, qualified charitable distributions, charitable remainder trust, and charitable lead trust. You can also do charitable beneficiary designations on life insurance, annuities, and those types of assets. But think about this: give more and give tax smart. A lot of times when we talk about giving tax smart, is we're not taking money away from your kids or their inheritance. We're going to give more money to charity now or in the future. And if you think about where did that money come from, it came from the tax bill. If we can reduce that taxes and reallocate it to your family and to your charities, it's a win-win situation. But there again, if it fits your goals, that's something we would want to discuss. If you want, the goal of protecting a beneficiary or a family legacy, now we would look at spendthrift trust, special needs trust, and those are, are irrevocable trusts, and we can set them up during life, or we can set them up as part of your estate plan to come in after you pass. But the big things that we're looking at there, if we're looking at controlling the creditors for your kids, or we're working on really controlling the spending of your kids, or we have a special needs child, the trustee selection becomes even more of an issue we need to discuss. You need to be thinking about this. Who, if I'm not there, who is going to do the best for my kids like I would? And so taking the time to have the right trustee in place is as important as anything else that you're going to do. Don't just default into a trustee, oh, it's my oldest child, or it's all my kids in order, or all my kids together. I'm not saying those aren't the right answers, but make sure you're taking the time to get the answer that is correct for you and your situation. Finally, we want to make sure that we have everything titled and all of the beneficiaries set up correctly. And I can't tell you how many times somebody has, done a lot of their planning, got all of their planning. I will have to say their planning was done correctly, except for they didn't transfer the asset into their trust, or they didn't change the beneficiary designation on their life insurance and retirement accounts. All of these things, planning, you can do the best planning, but if you don't get it across the finish line, those things didn't happen. And it's a sad situation. I've been the bearer of bad news way more times than I've ever wanted to, but I can't change it, when we don't have control of it after the fact. So we got to be careful. There again, do your planning and finish the planning. Finally, if you want to increase your retirement income with confidence, you can use income annuities. You can do partial annuitizations. With an annuity sits there as a pot of money that's growing. You can take money out as a withdrawal, but at some point, if you want to turn that from an asset to income, it's called annuitization. And you can have that annuitized for, depending on the annuity, to last your lifetime. I do some annuities where it lasts for both the husband and wife's joint lifetime. What I like about it is some of those annuities have that hybrid long-term care feature to it that will double the income amount for a set period of time, say 5 years. So it doubles the income to help cover those long-term care needs. So annuities can be a great tool. They're not for everybody, but they are a good tool in the right situations. Finally, planning for long-term care. Planning for long-term care, you can use traditional long-term care or hybrid long-term care. Not as big a fan of traditional long-term care, because if you didn't ever use the long-term care benefit, you paid for something and it goes away and nobody got to use it. With a hybrid long-term care policy that is more common today, if you don't use it for long-term care, that's going to pass on to the family as a death benefit. And it creates a nice situation so that we plan for long-term care. We hope it doesn't happen, but statistically, 70% or more are going to need long-term care. So let's have the discussion and plan for it, and plan for the year, organize your assets in a way so you, your family have that discussion. Here's how that's going to be taken care of. So as you think about the advanced planning, these are just additional strategies that we want to use. we want to make sure in any type of planning that we do that we're planning for you. We're planning to meet your goals and objectives. No two plans are ever going to be the same. If they're the same or similar, it's by luck, because all of the plans need to be customized and fit your situation. So, all right, John, do we have any questions? This is a good place for me to stop.
We do. Rick, excellent. Your presentations are just so clear and helpful. Oh, we got some good questions here. So let's get underway. The first question is, I intend to stay in my home until I leave this mortal existence. It represents nearly the entirety of my estate, which I'm leaving to my children in equal parts. What advice do you have to minimize estate taxes and, if possible, real estate taxes should one of my children choose to live in the home after I'm gone? Should the home be put into a trust, divided up early as joint tenancy with rights of survivorship, or otherwise?
That there's a lot more to that question than a simple question. And it's an important one, because I think a lot of parents will come, think about these the same way. When you're thinking about your home, I will tell you this: the joint tenancy, just put an X through that. Don't do it. Don't transfer that home to your kids now, because what happens is, when you have your home, when you have any assets, we have an estate tax, and there's a trade-off in the estate tax. We have the estate tax that says if you're above the federal exemption level, and that exemption level, just so you know today, if you are over $15 million, $30 million as a couple, then you're going to be subject to a 40% tax on anything above that amount. If you are anywhere below 15 million right now, you are not subject to a state tax at the federal level. Now, there's always, we have to be aware of state estate taxes. And depending on what state you're in, then we have to have that conversation. Out west, you've got Washington, Oregon, both have estate taxes. On the East Coast, I know Massachusetts, there's a handful that have their own estate tax, and those will start at as low as $1 million of value. So we have to be careful there. But most of the time, estate tax is not going to be an issue based on this scenario. The trade-off of having the estate tax, and this is built into the estate tax laws, is there's a step up in basis. What that means: at your death, whatever the fair market value is of that asset now becomes the basis. So basis is what did you pay for it plus any improvements. So let's say, and I just had a client that did the opposite of what I'm telling you. Her mom actually put her on the deed to her house about 10 years before she passed. When her mom gifted that to her, the basis that she got was it's called a carryover basis. She got the same basis that her mom had, and her mom had bought that home in about 1965. And at that time, the home was worth about $75,000. Now roll up to 2025, when mom passed away, that home is worth over $500,000. So when you figure out taxes, it's fair market value minus the basis. That's our gain, and that's what you pay tax on. So my client, because her mom had put her on the deed as a gift, she had to pay tax on $425,000 of gain. Now, if mom had kept that in her estate, either in a revocable trust or as part of her will, and had passed that on to her only daughter at death, now instead of a $75,000 basis, it would have gone up to a $500,000 basis. Sell price of $500 minus $500, no tax. So that little whoops cost her $425,000 of taxable income. Now, it's one where if you've got asset protection problems, maybe we have to change that answer, but I would make that part of your a trust or a will. If it's your only asset, there again, I would have the discussion, is a trust appropriate or is a will appropriate? Just remember, if it's a will, your kids will go through probate, which may or may not be a problem in the state that you're in. I can tell you easy ones. If you're in California or New York, do a trust. Your kids will thank you for it. And a few other states will follow suit. But now the other thing that you're going to have there is you're going to look at, if it's your only asset in retirement, you may need access to the liquidity of that home to pay for your care as well. Staying in the home is great. If you need to, get assets, you can take a loan against the house. Those, there again, not a bad idea. Use the assets that you have. If you have other assets like retirement accounts, spend those first. Then I would look at using the home second or third in the list. So no joint tenancy. Don't transfer it to the kids now, and make it as either part of your will or trust. And then that way you've got access to it as you want. The other things that if you want to stay in the home, remember, if you do a trust, then the kids, whoever, your kids probably would be the next trustees, one or all of them. They would have control of that just like you would. And then if you have a will, make sure you have a durable power of attorney so your kids can access that home if you were to lose mental capacity during the long-term care situation.
Right. Excellent. This is where good planning really makes a difference. Obviously, think about this stuff. That's great. Another good question. Does Camas have lawyers licensed in all states, particularly for us in Michigan for doing estate plans in Michigan and advanced directives for healthcare in Michigan? Michigan's patient advocate. Is there an advantage of working with Camas versus a local attorney? Is Camas particularly familiar with the needs of Christian Science clients? A lot of questions there, so I can repeat them as we go if that helps.
Yeah, it's one, we want to use somebody that is familiar with that state. Every state's different. I can group a lot of states together. We have 11, I think it is, community property states. I would say 10 of those would group together. California would be the odd one out there. But every state has little things, so we always want to use somebody that is licensed to practice in that state and understands the little nuances that are in those states, so you don't run into a problem. We have access. We use attorneys all over the country. We've got access to every state, and so we will get you somebody that is familiar with those laws. And you definitely want to make sure you've got that. There again, it's unique, and if you want unique, go to Louisiana. Their laws are completely different than everybody else, and it's one, we use very specifically Louisiana attorneys. Nobody else would even think about going there. So
Interesting.
Yes, it's one. And if you have a local attorney that you like, definitely that's who you should use. But if they're not here's the problem with attorneys. Way too many attorneys say they're an estate planner. Now, a lot of them are not just estate planners, but they do divorce law, bankruptcy, criminal law, personal injury. And by the way, if you need an estate plan, they'll do it for you. They're not an estate planner. They may get it right. They may get it wrong. If they get it right, it'll probably be by luck. So work with somebody that does estate planning, and that's something that we can help you with.
Well, we've sure seen that on this end when you get a a general practice attorney or whatever, and they really don't know estate law, good heavens, it's a bad deal. And I like this. The questioner says, about getting a advanced healthcare directive. I mean, that is so important to get squared away.
There was one more question in there too, is the Christian Science Health Directive.
Right.
That is something that is unique and needs to be well thought out. I mean, I can tell you we deal with a lot of Christian scientists that want they want very specific care. And if you don't have that set up right and named the right person, you're not going to get the care that you thought you were. And so it is very specific in laying out that what your health plan, what you want your health plan to be. And so it's not only getting the health directive, but it's naming the agent that knows what your wishes are. Remember, you're giving somebody control. You want to make sure they know exactly what you want to have happen. And heaven forbid, any of us that don't plan ahead, guess what? The courts decide for us. And they don't care what your wishes are. They're going to name somebody that is beholden to the court. So having all that done, very, very important.
So very important. That's why we have these webinars in this series. My goodness, you've got to get this all written out. Perfect. Next question. On your CAMAS website, under estate planning, you list prospective client initial consulting and discovery call. I'm sorry, let me repeat that. On your CAMAS website, under estate planning, you list A, prospective client initial consultation, and B, discovery call. What's the difference?
It's one, so I will say it sets up as two different time frames is what it is. Most of the time, so the initial call is going to be 30 minutes or less. And that's to just organize everything in a way to point you in the right direction of what we would need. And to, so you can get all of your documents together. Then once we have all of you have your documents, questionnaires, then we can sit down and have a more in-depth conversation. And because most people are not ready for the in-depth conversation. And both of those are goal setting and goal defining types of meetings. I want to know what we're trying to accomplish. And, I've used this example, brought this example up, maybe with this group. I had a client, a prospective client referred to me years ago. And when he came in, he said, I need to do an estate plan. And we talked, and I said, well, what do you want? What do you want? How do you want this? Who do you want to take care of? On and on and on, asking the questions. He said, I don't care what happens. I don't care, how much goes to my kids. I don't care how much goes to taxes. And we went round and round and round for about 15, 20 minutes of him saying he doesn't care. And I said, well, just to make it clear, I care less than you do. And we ended up shaking hands and parting company because he really didn't care. He wasn't prepared to, answer it. And I don't know if deep down he really believed that, but I couldn't get him beyond, I don't care. Just give me the documents and we'll call it good. And I said, well, if that's the concern, you don't even need documents, just let it go. And he walked out the door. I've had other clients that it's taken us 5, 6, 7 meetings to really drill in and get the right approach. They weren't ready to, they needed help figuring out what their goals were, because nobody, they weren't in a position, nobody had asked them. Nobody had given them the ideas of where to go. Everybody on the call, you've had weeks, months now to be thinking this through. you're going to be in a position to take those next steps fairly quick. But so really the steps are, helping people get organized to what we need, then having the real meeting of digging into the design and goals and objectives.
Perfect. That's really helpful. Next up, is it worthwhile filling out your CAMAS worksheets even if we end up going to a local attorney to do our estate planning?
Absolutely. Fill them out. Take them,
Absolutely.
these are for you to use. And I can tell you, if they're a good estate planner, they're going to ask you very, very similar questions. And it comes back to this. I don't know you. When you come in to meet with me, I don't know you. I mean, rather quickly, I'm going to, crawl all over everything you've got to know what makes you tick and what you have. Because it's not just about what you have, it's how do you own it and where do you want it to go? All of those things come together. So if you're filling out those worksheets and taking them to somebody else, absolutely do it. That's going to speed up the process because they're going to ask you the exact same things.
Exactly. And the whole purpose of this webinar is not to necessarily have you use Rick. I mean, some do and some of you won't, obviously. But have all the information you need so that when you work with your attorney, it's ready to go, as Rick just said. So this requires a lot of planning, and the more informed you are and the more information you have and at your fingertips, you can get it done. In the first session, you said, with a living trust, you can update at any time. With a will, you can have a special power of appointment that allows you to update, adjust things as you go. What does this mean?
Okay. So with a trust, it's, you're going to have a revocable living trust. With that revocable living trust, as long as you have mental capacity and up to the point of passing, you can make any changes. You can rip it up and throw it away. So, you've got that much control. Now, if it's spouses, you will need to make a decision that can you make changes after the first spouse passes? And I've seen documents, I've reviewed documents, through my career where first spouse has passed away, second spouse comes in and says, I want to change it. Well, the document says you can't. After the first spouse passes, you can no longer make any more changes. So that's something if it's spouses setting this up, you're going to have to decide how we want to do this. If it's individual, on a revocable living trust, as long as you have mental capacity, you can make any change you want. Now, special power of appointment. Let me make one change, say one thing before that. With a will, you've got the same ability to make changes anytime you want. So just so you know, a change in a trust is a trust amendment, and you'll order them. Trust amendment number 1, amendment number 2. If you've made a lot of amendments, the attorney may say, you know what, we need to do what's called a total restatement of the trust. That is, let's take all of the original trust with all the amendments and now do one completely updated, amended, and restated trust. The reason we do the amended and restated is because you should have been transferring assets to that trust. If you've made all those transfers, we don't want to go and have to transfer assets all over again. So we keep the original trust, but now we've got a completely updated trust now with the same original date that you signed it. That's important. With a will, you can make changes anytime you want. But that will, just so you understand, the amendments are called codicils. It's Old English law, so that's come through. So a codicil. You can there again have as many amendments, codicils that you want to a will. Now we just want to make sure it's current. The only problem is that I want everybody to be aware of is formality. With a trust, if you do the amendment, sign it, date it, get it notarized. With a codicil, sign it, date it, two witnesses, and get it notarized. So you've got to go through the same formality that the original was when you make those updates. Now, special power of appointment. Let me clean this up a little bit. With a special power of appointment, what that allows is you can name somebody in your will that would have or you can do it in a trust too, that can make very specific, can make changes to your trust or to your will on the distribution. So where I would use that. So let's say my dad, when in his trust, said, I'm going to distribute all of this to Rick, but I will give Rick a special power of appointment that he can make changes of how he wants to distribute it onto his kids when he passes. So that allows me to make changes as I'm passing it to the next generation. Or it can be a total special power of appointment. I can give it to anybody, except I can't give it to myself. A general power of appointment can come to me. A special power of appointment, I'm giving it to anybody but me. So you can include that in. If we're including kids and grandkids in the distributions, then we can give the kids the special power of appointment to adjust distributions to the kids. Great tool. It's not used as much as it probably should be, but I include those anytime we're doing multi-generational planning.
Very interesting. Two more questions. If anybody wants to submit questions, now is a good time. We have 2 to go here, and we're coming up to the top of the hour. How should digital assets be handled in an estate plan?
Digital assets, we're now able to, we see them more where we can identify they're in an account. And we want to make sure that account, I like that in a revocable trust, at least. I do put those in LLCs and irrevocable trusts as well. But the digital, we've got to have a specific account to tie it to. So if once we have that account, we can put it into any other asset, just like bank account or whatever. But it's more, there is more activity now of how to specifically deal with digital assets, but it really is treated the same as everything else when you really get down to it.
Okay, great. One more. If one has adequate assets to fund long-term care, is there any reason to consider long-term care insurance or some version thereof?
I use the word leverage, and I've worked with a lot of clients over the years, and a lot of clients I've met with, talked to over the years, they will identify an account. It's usually something that's invested very conservatively, and I've heard them say, that's my long-term care bucket. Just in case I need it, I want a liquid, bucket of money that can handle long-term care. Well, when you're looking at a long-term care policy, think about leverage. Can I leverage those dollars to something better? So maybe 100,000 of an account becomes a $500,000 bucket of long-term care money, or something along those lines. My dad, I set up a policy for my dad. It's a hybrid long-term care annuity. He had heart problems. He had a 4-way bypass, and 9 months after that, we got him a long-term care annuity that gave him 3 times what that principal balance would have been. So, think about it. I'm not saying you have to do it, but I would at least look at it and check it out, kick the tires, see if it's a better fit for you. And if it's not, check the box. You've at least looked. They've made some great progress in the long-term care world. And what I do like about the hybrid long-term care is the leverage, the access when you need it, and if you don't use it, the family's going to get the money back at least. So
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, that whereas before, and I've had clients that have died from a heart attack. They had funded a traditional long-term care policy. They didn't ever need anything. They died from a heart attack. The insurance company kept the money. So was it bad planning? I'm not going to say it's bad planning. It was unfortunate planning, in hindsight. So I would say look at it, see if it's a good fit. And if it's not, check the box and move on, but it's probably worth your time.
Very helpful. Make it an informed choice. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's all of our questions. Rick, thank you for another informative session, and thanks to all for your good questions. This is great. Please know that you're welcome to submit questions in advance for our last webinar, which will be held on Tuesday, March 24th, so that Rick can incorporate them into his opening remarks. Rick will wrap up our 6-part series with a look at how your estate plan will go into effect upon your passing. We look forward to seeing you next month. And finally, a quick reminder about our annual meeting. It will take place on Sunday, May 3rd at 2 p.m. Pacific. And our speaker will be Bruce Jeffrey, most recently the Executive Director of the Principal Foundation. You'll receive an email invitation in the weeks to come. Once again, thanks to everyone, and goodbye for now.